Well, thank you so much for being here. This is great. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. My name is Mark Resnick. I'm the author of 10 Days with Dad, Finding Your Purpose, Passion, and Peace During the Darkest Days of Alzheimer's and COVID-19. I've always considered myself to be a writer from a very early age, actually since the 5th grade, to be precise. I'm not a public speaker, though. I just want to give you the fair warning. I like to write. I'm not so crazy about the speaking part, so I'll do my best. I also have a little rule, since this is a very emotional topic for me. If I do start to, kind of lose my nerves a little bit, raise your hand, ask me a question. I don't care if it's what color's the sky or what's your favorite color. It doesn't matter. That'll get me back on track, because it is it's a sensitive topic still. My dad passed away in August of 2021, so it hasn't even been, 6 months yet. And so today, I don't have a script either for my talks. I just kind of go with the flow. I sort of break down my story a little bit. The book is divided into sections, and primarily it basically equates to my life story, my father's life story, my caregiving experience with my dad, and then my post-caregiving experience, how I was able to deal with and recover and move on from the pain of his diagnosis. So those are the sections of the book. I'll talk a little bit, if anyone's interested, about the writing process, what that was like as a first-time author. And then, lastly, of course, I want your questions if you have any. So we're going to talk a little bit about everything today. And there's nothing off limits. I'm an open book, literally and figuratively. So at the end, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. So again, my dad, I grew up on the South Shore of Norwell. It's in the South Shore of Norwell, Massachusetts. Nothing special about that. I grew up with my dad, though, not and my two other brothers. There was four of us in the house. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old. Again, nothing unusual about that, but it was my mom who moved out of the house, not my father, which was unusual, especially in 1980. It was kind of a big deal. Not that we knew it, we were clueless. So that was unique, growing up with my brothers and my dad in what we call the bachelor pad in Norwell. And I lived with my dad till I was 22, and then later in life, we were business partners for 14 years. And then, so I've obviously spent a lot of time with my dad, but I never honestly truly felt, out of all those years being with my dad, that I really knew who he was until he got sick. It was the first time I really actually got to know my dad as a person beyond what he did for me as a father. So my dad got the diagnosis for Alzheimer's in 2014, and as typical in the first couple of years, I'm sure he had it before that. I'm 100% convinced it was probably 2 or 3 years before that. And, as is typical, though, he had a few good years where he was able to drive, cook, take his meds, do all the stuff he did before, party, whatever he wanted to do. Probably about 3 years into his diagnosis, as things started to progress, he had a little trouble driving and cooking, and so he did lose his license. He stopped cooking, and eventually he had stopped, being able to take care of himself. So my brothers and I, we took turns during that time. We would go down to Pembroke, his condo, every day, and one of us would take him out to breakfast and give him his meds and all that good stuff. And one day, it was my turn. I would probably make the trip 2 or 3 times a week. I show up to take my dad out to the omelet factory down the street, and my dad's just a mess. He's just out of it. He's usually on the couch, napping, watching TV, reading the paper, and I literally walked into the house, and he was like sitting right in front of me, and he was just like staring off into space, and he was just his hair was crazy. So my dad had a form of, he had Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia. He was kind of a hybrid, it was a hybrid diagnosis. And with his Lewy body dementia, he had hallucinations, which again is pretty par for the course. He didn't have the type that some people with Lewy bodies actually can get violent and very spontaneous. He didn't have any of that. He was a kind, gentle soul his entire life. But he had these hallucinations. He would see things in his house, little creatures, and we didn't know what to call these creatures, so we called them demons. So he would see demons. When I showed up that day in March, his demons had just gotten the best of him, and it was time. I said, Dad, let's go. So I said, we're out of here. We're leaving. Pack a bag, and let's go. You come with me to my house. Now, to be fair, we were trying to find an assisted living arrangement for my father. It was clear that he had gone beyond a home situation. But we hadn't found one yet, and we didn't know when we were going to actually move him into one. So for the next 10 days, my dad spent 10 days with my family in Walpole. And then from there, we were in that time, it was just enough time to find an assisted living place, which we did in Sharon called the Whitney Place. And then 10 months after that, he ended up in a nursing home in Plymouth, Mass. Called Newfield House. So that's the nutshell of the story, so to speak. Growing up in a fairly dysfunctional family with my dad and my brothers, somehow managing to be, I guess quasi-successful, or at least not in jail. Norwell's a beautiful town, and it's a low crime rate, but we had a lot of freedoms that most kids our age certainly didn't have. From going, him sacrificing as a single parent. He was just so busy all the time, just trying to put us through college and high school, and we went to private school, which was nice. He just, as a dad, his sacrifices were unbelievable, but he wasn't a very empathetic, emotional person. In part because he grew up that way himself. His story was he grew up with a single parent as well. But also in part because he just didn't have time to, take a break. He was just constantly going and going and going. And so from that experience to being a business partner with him, to his Alzheimer's diagnosis, and then post-Alzheimer's diagnosis, I have to say, the book, the experience, I say this to people and they look at me a little crazy, but there were so many hidden blessings that came out of his Alzheimer's diagnosis. It's an awful, awful disease. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, my worst enemy. But at the same time, like COVID, how awful that was, some good things did come out of that. And my blessing, my primary blessing from his diagnosis was the fact that I got to know him so well. Because he spent those 10 days with us, and because he moved to Sharon, right down the street, I saw him every single day. Sometimes twice a day. We spent so much time together, and that was incredible. I just never knew him. I never knew that, I knew his hockey experience. I knew he was a coach, and he coached me, and I knew what he did for a living, and I knew he had a quirky sense of humor, but I didn't really know what he was all about. I didn't even know his story. I didn't even know his father's first name because his father had moved out of the house when he was young. All this kind of came about during his sickness. It was crazy. So for me, I'm moving this a little quickly. I hope I'm not talking too fast, but that's just kind of how I am when I'm nervous. I've always been a journaler, or at least as a kid. So my mom moved out of the house when I was 7. She's still in my life. We're just not very close. We talk and stuff, but we're not close. So I didn't really have a mom or dad to rely on when things got tough. And as I outlined in the book, there are some things that happened in my life that, they're not super crazy, but they were tough to deal with by yourself. Kids losing their lives to suicide, depression, just a whole bunch of things that I really didn't think anything about. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I just wrote in my journal. I vented. So when my dad got sick, I started journaling again. And then probably a month into it, I said, there's something bigger here. We all started to click. There's a story larger than just my dad getting sick. And I wanted to share that. And as he got more sick, it became even more clear that, why do we have to wait so long to change our lives, to change our mindset, to be the people we think we're capable of being, whether it's a passion, a hobby, a skill, a relationship, a job? We usually wait for a crisis to happen, something life-altering. And I was like, if I can just tell people, especially my kids and young people, don't wait. Let's not wait for these horrible terminal diseases to happen to change your life. We're all terminal, right? As soon as we're born, we're all terminal. We're going to die at some point. Some of us die quicker than others, unfortunately. But we have so much life to live right now in this moment that the message of the book, after I told my story and made the connections to his sacrifices and all the things I learned from my dad, which are outlined in the book, I really just came away inspired and motivated at the end of this journey to share my message of, hey, go after your passions right now. Don't wait for anything to happen. Just do it. Just go get it. So when you're writing a book, they tell you to, have a very specific, narrow-minded audience. Like, don't try to write for the whole world. Don't try to write for stay-at-home dads. Or be specific like that. Write for a specific audience. And I just couldn't do it. I just knew that if you were a sandwich parent like myself, if you were taking care of somebody older and younger, if you had a dysfunctional family, if you came from divorced parents, like I wanted to touch all the bases. So like most things in my life, I just kind of ignored the experts and just did what I wanted to do. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I did have my kids in the back of my mind. I did, as I'm writing this thing the whole time, I'm thinking to myself, if there's any message here, it's to my kids. It's like, hey guys, if you pursue your passions now as a youngster, you'll be so much happier and later on in life. Because all of us have had regrets. All of us have demons, whether they're physical or emotional or mental demons to overcome, and we fight every single day, some of us. But if we wait until the end of our lives to change, our bus ride is short. We just have so much time on this planet. And and it's just crazy how your mindset can change in an instant. When I was a youngster, one of my first jobs, it was my first job out of college, and I used to have to run these fundraisers for students, and volunteers would come in, adults, and this guy, we would serve pizza and soda every night. And one of the adults said, I can't eat pizza, I can't eat the cheese. I said, I'm 23 years old. I said, what do you mean you can't eat cheese? That's pizza, you have to eat the pizza. He's like, I can't have a heart attack, I have to watch my diet now. And I was like, I couldn't relate. I was like, what? I was almost like, a heart attack, question mark. You can't eat pizza? Like that. But I get it now. Like your life, when something like that happens, things change in an instant. And it shouldn't have to be that way. None of us, myself included, are obligated to be the people we were 5 years ago or 25 years ago, 5 months ago. We can change at any point. It might be hard, but we can do it. And so that is the ultimate takeaway from the book. That was a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So I definitely, again, any kind of questions on the table, I could go in so many different directions. I didn't really talk about the writing process, but I would be happy to. Does anyone have any initial, yes?
I'm going to read the book, but I want to cheat.
Yeah.
I want to see whereabouts in the book you address that point that you made about not waiting to start living your life in a more meaningful way.
Yep, that would be there's 6 parts to the book. That would be part 6. Aaron, if you could just look up the page on that. But it's the last 30, 40, 50 pages of the book.
Thank you.
How getting over.
I'll read the rest of the book.
Yeah, no, it wasn't really a question, but it gives me a nice opportunity to basically add to this. That look, I feel this is the happiest I've ever been in my life, and I say that knowing that I'm still dealing with the same stuff that you are. I have a close family member dealing with addiction. My wife has long COVID. There's stuff in my life that should be bringing me down, but it's not as much. It wouldn't have happened if my dad hadn't gotten sick. If I hadn't been open to new experiences and tried new, again, he got sick. I said, that's it. I'm just going to not enjoy myself and do whatever I want, but I'm going to try new things. I started meditating. I joined a life coaching program, and they talked about, what are the steps that not steps, but what makes you happy? What do you like to do? Make a list. Okay, try to do as many of those as you can in a day. They're called vitamins. Little things like that. I'm much more calm and optimistic than I've ever been. Again, unfortunately, because my dad got sick. But that's why I'm here to tell you. Don't wait for that incident. Bob.
So if you could dad, the things that you appreciate or that you learned from him, what would some of those things be?
I would, and I told, when he was very sick, and I thought he was dying literally in my arms. I said, I love you, of course. I thank you so much for everything you did for us. I'm so proud of you. Your sacrifice was just, and I wrote this in the book. I feel like I'm a kid who was always a little bit appreciative when I shouldn't have been. Like I knew what my dad was doing. I didn't know what he was doing, but I knew what he was doing was good, if that makes sense. So I was always very, like when I went to Xaverian, I was a BC student in my public school, and I knew it was a big deal for him to send me to Xaverian, and I tried really hard, and I did well, because I knew he was, his hard-earned cash was coming out of his pocket. So gratitude, just how grateful I am for everything he did for me. As it's happening in real time, you don't appreciate it. You just don't appreciate it. Did I answer your question? Tough one. Leave it to you.
I know. It's, well.
Honestly, though, if there was a volume 2, there would be other things too. Like I know my dad had regrets, and he shouldn't have. He had regrets. My dad was a hockey player. He went from high school to the Navy to college, so he did it a little bit differently. And he tried out for the hockey team, and he made the freshman team at Boston University. It was a big deal. And he didn't stick with it. He, wanted to pay his own tuition, so he stopped. He quit. I'm not 100% sure if he quit because he never felt like he was going to make it. I didn't get that impression, but there was something holding him back, and I'm not 100% sure. And, I would have said, don't worry about it. I knew what bothered him. We used to go to BU games all the time, and he'd walk by the luxury box for past players, and he was a past player, so he was entitled to go in there, but he couldn't do it. He should have. He should have been proud of his actions.
You'll probably have some regrets too. I think everybody has some.
I have tons of regrets. I have thousands of regrets. But they don't bother me like they used to, honestly. I will have regrets till the day I die, for sure. I'm going to have regret after this talk that I didn't answer your question better.
Those are good regrets.
But sincerely, they just don't bother me the same. I write in the book, I never really felt successful as a person. I never really felt like I was, worthy of success. But my definition of success was messed up.
So what was the impetus for you to decide to turn all of your experiences with your journey with your dad into a book?
I would say two big reasons, and they're both selfish. One is I wanted to leave something for my children, like a legacy, because I wanted them to know my story. And to be fair, they knew a lot of it already, because I wasn't like my dad. I was like, but I regretted not knowing my dad's story, and I still don't know his parts of his story. A lot of it, like I don't know, why did my mom move out of the house? She can't talk about it because she has her own little issues, but that makes no sense to me. That my mother would have, why didn't he get the boot? And I can't ask either one of them. One's gone and one just won't talk about it. So I wanted my children to know my story. And I wanted people to know my dad's story. I wanted him to know, and others, what he did.
Did he know you were going to write a book?
No. He didn't know enough. He was beyond his, when I told him, he was beyond his sort of comprehension of, yeah. And I really didn't either. I mean, I started while he was sick, but I really didn't know it was going to become a book at the time. I thought it was just therapy. And it was good therapy.
Now, how about the first 5 parts? Where are they? If the last part is live for the moment, or,
Okay, so the first part is my story, like how I grew up. I literally explained my parents' divorce. That's one of the few childhood memories I have is when they announced they were separating. That's it. Anything before that incident, I have no memory of my mom living at the house. 0. I didn't have a mom growing up. I just don't remember it. So I thought it was, again, I'm keeping in mind my children, right? So I want them to know. Here's the thing about writing, in my opinion, my humble opinion. I had no clue that this was going to all tie in. Like 0. I was a brain dumper. I just got all my stuff on paper, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And then it's all in front of me, and I said, well, what do I got here? I have no idea. But the more you write, the more your muscle memory gets going. Like anything, the more foul shots you take, and you start honing your shot, they start going in more often, and eventually you don't have to think about it. Eventually, the more I wrote, the more it kind of, I think I told this in our little writing group, there's a couple of members in it. There's a scene, and if there's any Harry Potter fans in here, I'm unabashedly one of them. But anyways, there's a story about the young wizard, and he's fighting the evil genius, and all of a sudden his wizard is just like doing the magic for him, and he says, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And his friends are like, yeah. That's how I felt writing the book. I didn't know how it came together, it just came together. I totally forgot the question, because I was talking about, what was the question?
I was just asking about the first 5 parts.
This is great TV, Nick. Oh, right. So anyways, thank you. Thank you. So I wanted my story on paper, and I wanted my dad's story on paper. And then as soon as I finished my dad's, I knew I was, again, I'm such a goof. I knew my dad grew up with a single parent, but I never really thought about what that meant. I was so absorbed in my own life having a single parent. I never thought about him growing up with a mom and not having a dad in the house. So I didn't have a mom, he didn't have a dad. Our careers, we ended up in the same career. We were both coaches. There's so much overlap. It was incredible. That's where the story, that's where it started to come together. My story, his story. The 10 days with Dad is really only 10 days. It's just one part of the book. It's that baptism by fire section in the middle where I kind of give you the warts and the details about what it was like to take care of my dad, totally unprepared. It was fascinating and funny and sad at the same time. And then the next part of the book is the 10 months at the assisted living and how I really got to know him. And then by the time he passed away, one of the things that struck me the most when he passed was all his former hockey players and my hockey player friends said, I remember your dad, he was the best. He had these 10 commandments of hockey that we would recite before every game. And I'm thinking, 30 years later, these kids are still remembering the 10 commandments of hockey? They're actually 29, but you get the point. And so then again, I don't know how it happened. The wine started writing its thing, and I was like, wow, all this time later, and they still remember these fundamentals of hockey? Well, what if I had my fundamentals of living? Wouldn't that be a great gift for my children? And that's how it came together. And I thought the editor was going to take out all the stuff in the beginning because I didn't think it was important. Who wants to read about me, But all the lessons tied in, either through my dad or through the principles of my life that I would want to espouse on others. It's crazy. I wish I don't know, Bob's several books under his belt. I don't know if that's how it normally works. Do you find that it just kind of comes together somehow with the help of an editor?
I think your story is somewhat unique. When you're writing fiction, you might start with a big idea that we're drawn to or enchanted by or want to explore in some way, and we kind of find our way into it and are drawn deeper into it.
Thinker,
Yeah.
get drawn into it.
So,
But it comes together somehow.
yeah, somehow.
I have a theory as to why your father stayed.
Bring it on.
No, I think it was because he grew up without a father, And he didn't want that to happen to you boys.
I think that's as good of any explanation. I do think that that's partly true. From the snippets of communication I've gotten out there, I know he was very adamant about not leaving. Maybe that was it. That's as good as any I've heard. I still can't believe my mom would agree to it, but I mean, I have a relative in the room. I'm going to put Jean on the spot. Do you have any insight? I mean, that I should have contacted my consultant before? Do you have any inside information? I totally put you on the spot. You don't have to answer that.
It's unusual, you don't understand it
Yeah.
at the time. I thought it's just not the norm. And, question, who's older and who's younger? Are you in the middle?
I'm the middle child.
Okay.
Tried and true.
So there was one younger than you?
Yes, he was very young. He definitely had it the hardest. He had the most alone time and the most. It's funny because my older brother rebelled and my younger brother was just sad. He just struggled, and I was kind of the one kind of keeping it together and just bouncing back and forth.
How much older was your older brother?
Almost 2.5 years. We never really we're close, but not close. We're a lot closer. I'm closer with my brother than with my mom, but he was just old enough to sort of. He used to try to get my dad's attention. He would do stupid things to get caught, and he got caught. And my dad didn't. He was like, all right, don't do it again. It was like he couldn't get the attention from anybody. So.
How old was your dad when he displayed signs of Alzheimer's?
77. And again, obviously, with Alzheimer's, they say 20, 30 years ahead of time. Like right now, it's the plaques are building up on your brain. Unfortunately, they don't want to bug you out. But usually 7 or 8 years is the diagnosis, and then most doctors will say, yeah, probably 3, 4, 5 years before that, he was dealing with it by himself. Just not Any other questions?
Yeah, Mark, I want to hear about your writing process. I'm just curious, because I've read large chunks of the book. I haven't read it start to finish yet. Just how long it took you to write it, how you finished it, like how much time you spent writing.
Yeah.
This is kind of from my own knowledge. I'd like to know how long it takes.
Yeah, no, that's all
Because
fair.
it seems like you went through it, you were very motivated, but then you self-motivated. Because I feel like by the time I met you, you already had most of it done.
I knew it was happening no matter what.
Yeah.
When I joined the group a couple years ago, yeah.
But is that just like your own like intrinsic motivation?
A couple things. Bob, going back to your question about impetus, what really sparked it. So as a result of his sickness, I told you I was open to other coaching things and life experiences, and I met a gentleman, and long story short, I belong to his networking group, and one of his things is build your life resume. Yeah, you got a nice work resume, you do whatever you want. Build your life resume. That's the whole, like, your bus ride is short, do as much as, enjoy your life now. Do things that you're going to remember, and when you're in your on your deathly bed, you don't want to look back and say, oh, I wish I had done more road races. I wish I had written that book. And so one of the things that he challenged us with is this thing called the Misogi, which is a life-altering, really stretch yourself outside the boundaries of your capabilities that you think in your head. Some people do a half marathon or a marathon or a triathlon. I knew right away mine was to write this book. I just knew, and I was writing this book no matter what. And the other blessing of COVID was, my business, went like that. And there was some other business that went out, but I had time, and I would split my days. Now, you're a teacher, so you can't really do that, but I'm not a morning person. I read a lot of books about writing, and a lot of people get up early and write. No way, that's not me. I'm a night owl. I love to write at night. And just when I'm getting tired, that's when the juices start kicking in, and I'm like, I need to go to bed, and I can't. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. So writing was definitely a second job, 100%. I mean, it was probably 5 hours a day because I was motivated. But I think that's not the only way to do it, but I think it's huge. You want to lose weight, you put it on the calendar. In a year from now, I'm going to be down 20 pounds. And that's it. There's no failure. There's no plan B. And that's kind of how I did. It took about, from the moment I started journaling to the moment I held the book in my hands was almost 3 years, maybe 2.5. And I brain dumped. I got all my stuff out in probably 8 months. And it was terrible. I told Bob it was just terrible. It's just your first draft is garbage. And you get a little dejected, but then you just get back on the bike and you keep going. And the second draft was hard. The rewrite was hard. When you're writing, they tell you not to do all your little edits as you go because that'll drive you crazy. I threw that rule out the window and I wrote and edited at the same time. And the second draft was brutal, but it got a little bit better. And at the end of the third draft, I knew I had something I could feel proud of, even if I didn't, sell a lot of copies. So my spark was I was definitely motivated. I really wanted to finish the book. I was also motivated by my dad. I really wanted to finish the book before he passed. And that's ultimate motivation. So my experience is a little different. But writing it in hindsight was probably a heck of a lot easier than selling it. There's a reason why most self-published authors sell 100 copies or less, because it's crazy hard work to sell a book. We were talking earlier, if you're a writer and that's all you do, you want to write. Writers don't like to sell. Very few of us do. I'm a salesman. I don't mind it. I actually love it. I love spending time selling my book. So it was a good fit. I was lucky. Again, another lucky situation. I don't know what you want to call it, but I'm okay putting myself out there. But I can see why authors struggle. It's hard. They're sending out the releases and the social media game and this. And I said to Aaron, don't feel bad if 5 people show up. Like, it's just part of the game. It's just part of it. It's part of the experience. And the next talk I give, which is tomorrow night, there'll be twice as many people. You just have to build up like you're writing. You just have to build it up. So, yeah, 3 years, grinded it out at night. Even now, I'm still like, when it first published, I would spend half the day working on the publishing part, working on my press kits and just reaching out to people. I called in I'm one of those people who I'm always giving. I'm never getting anything in return. And this time I said, that's it. I'm cashing in every IOU, which is really just a text. I went through every text and 1,500 emails. Hey, I just wrote a book. Here's the link. And that's it. That's how you have to do it. It's crazy. So I get a little frustrated with you and Elizabeth because I'm just like, write the book. And let the editors make it pretty and sound good and cut and just get it out there. You're writing it for yourself. Or your children. Yeah. Truly an honor to share this night with you guys. So thank you for coming. If there's any other questions, I'll stick around as long as you need me to. But I'm grateful. Thank you. If you do want a copy of the book, it's $15 in the back. You have to promise to write an Amazon review, because Amazon reviews are the golden key.